Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this discussion today on essentially we are talking about the whole direct-to-customer opportunity that FMCG companies are exploring. And we basically today really want to hear the CIO's perspective from a digital transformation point of view as to how direct-to-customer technologies is actually a business strategy, or are we looking at it as an opportunistic situation because of the pandemic? I mean, we all know that there's been a lot of talk about direct to customer. There's enough and more written about it. McKinsey's been writing about it for the past 5 years. We've had direct to customer brands which have started, and the new age digital brands have been talking about being direct to customer. But effectively, FMCG or traditional FMCG has typically been the kind of a model where it has been about the distributor, the retailer, and there is no direct, the customer is faceless. Okay, but with direct to customer model that is coming, we actually own the customer. We own the customer data, and there is scope for things like personalization, quick go to market. So these benefits are all there in front of us. Okay, but what we still want to understand today, okay, is two things, okay, or rather three things I would say, okay, and which are the three questions that I have discussed with you all yesterday as well. The point is, we want to understand very clearly as to is this a flash in the pan? Is it because of the pandemic that FMCG companies adopted direct to customer, or is it a sustainable business activity that we are looking at, okay, a business strategy, and is it here to stay? Is the customer behavior actually changing to be able to drive investment in this model? Okay. The second thing we really want to understand is that how is this actually changing the digital transformation agenda? Because direct to customer is not just about putting a fancy e-commerce portal out there or making yourself available on Amazon, right? It's also about how does the value chain how does the value chain essentially get affected, right? So, I mean, it changes the supply chain. It has impact on production. It has impact in terms of suddenly owning customer data, which FMCG companies were previously not looking at. So there's a lot of business impact to this situation. So it also impacts the CIO agenda essentially, right? And last, we want to understand is that typically this, direct to customer tech that is there is driven by startups. Okay. And working with startups has its own challenges. Okay. And I mean, they may be great at technology. We talk about the great culture of startups, etc. But bringing in a startup and then getting them to, work or work seamlessly with an organization which already has legacy systems, which has legacy processes, and also looking at saying that startups typically look at one problem, right? But they don't really bring in that industry knowledge or the ability to solve the problem across the value chain. So is the tech that is out there available, is it enough? Or are CIOs struggling to, get that tech to work for them in their organization? So these are essentially the questions that we want to answer. And I want to kind of structure this discussion very simply, as I would like to, while the floor is open for everybody to, ask questions and, or contribute to each of these areas. But it would be great if we could also, I would like to ask certain questions to certain people so that we basically have a quorum where everybody can express their views. So that's the way we're looking at. But before we start, it will be great if we could have one round of introduction so that everybody knows everybody. So Mr. Mistry, if we could start with you, a quick introduction, just a little background will be great.
Thank you. So I'm the Chief Information Officer and the Senior Vice President for Eureka Forbes. And I'm sure that you have been reading the news. We are now part of a bigger uh, organization, moving away from this Shabaji Palanji group, and now we'll be part of Advent going forward. So I look after the entire IT services portfolio, and also directly related to and responsible for the business part of it. So that's who I am.
Thank you, sir. Satish?
Yeah. Hi, I am Satish Pai. I'm currently the head IT for JL Morrison India Limited. So my experience has been primarily in FMCG. So I was earlier around 18 years with Marico and currently with JL Morrison India Limited. So people may not recognize JL Morrison India Limited as much. So earlier we were distributors and marketers for Nivea in India. And now what we do is we have our own flagship mother care brand called Morrison's Baby Dreams. Plus we distribute our partner brands called Begin, which is a hair color, and Immofoam, which is a sensitive toothpaste, which is more on a prescription-led rather than an OTC brand.
So I must tell you that Satish, JL Morrison is very close to my heart because it was my first job after my MBA in 2002. So, and yes, I was the then brand manager of Nivea. I launched Nivea Soft and Deo in India, and Immoform's been there since then. So it's good to see JL Morrison. Yeah. Vishal, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ipshita. So thank you, Satish. Myself, Vishal Jain, I'm looking after IT. I'm working with a company called Delmont India, right? We produce juices, olive oil, pasta, ketchup. The list is long actually. So more than 200 SKUs are there to serve the market. Yes, this discussion is again close to my heart. Reason behind before pandemic, we were more into B2B segment. Now, the moment pandemic started, we were thinking about starting the D2C market, but after pandemic, we are now more focused into D2C market. So, looking forward for your question and discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful, Prashant.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Prashant from Sohana Group of Companies. So we are into food processing products. We are into masalas, then spices, papad, pickle, RTC products. So we have got around 450 plus SKUs, and I take care of IT part of this organization. And we have got distribution pan India, 6 factories around Maharashtra and neighboring states. And we are also facing some challenges related to D2C. So it would be nice to interact with you all on this subject.
Wonderful. Anup, quick introduction.
Yeah. So I work as CTO at Hector Beverages, widely known as Paperboat Fruit Juices. Prior to Hector, I was working with Marico. That is how I know Satish. And before that, I was working with IT products and consulting kind of organizations. So around 8 years of experience in FMCG almost now. Yeah, so again, here to share my views, but more importantly, soak in a lot of information from all of you so that it helps in our journey as well. Thanks.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Bapna. How are you? Mr. Bapna? If you're on mute. Okay. While my colleague Aditya will just coordinate with Mr. Bapna, I think is for his volume thing. But Sumit, if you could just quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ipshita, and I feel great and really honored to be a part of this group, which has so many industry stalwarts, and I really look forward learning from all. I head the country for Vinculum Solutions for the new business. Vinculum basically is a omni-channel SaaS platform, and we help brands, retailers, 3PLs to sell from anywhere and fulfill from everywhere. So predominantly have been working with a lot of D2C brands. And a great journey and a lot of learnings that probably I can also share the way how we see it in terms of post-pandemic, how things have really changed for the good.
Thank you. I'll just quickly introduce myself, although I think almost everybody knows me, but my name is Ipsita and I head CalZoom Advisors. We are a research organization in digital transformation. And we basically are, and we are working very closely with Ganesh Natarajan on essentially looking at how FMCG companies are looking at digital transformation in India, especially in India, and what kind of strategy, what kind of what is the focus area, etc. And we partnered with Vinculum as well to kind of look at how direct to customer what's the approach to direct to customer, and that's why this roundtable right now. So thank you everyone for joining in. Okay, and like I mentioned that we would like to start this discussion essentially by trying to understand how that is how serious are FMCG companies in terms of looking at direct to customer as a model. Okay, and is it a flash in the pan, or is it a serious business strategy? Are they actually looking at this as a long-term initiative, or is it just a response to the current pandemic, and eventually we are going back to the old way of doing business? So it'll be great if I could put this question to Prashant and Satish to start with, and then we can open the floor to others. So Prashant, if you could just share your views, please.
So definitely, when before pandemic has changed many things for all of us. The business used to run before pandemic was different, and now things are different. Before pandemic, e-commerce contribution to FMCG was barely 2% in India, but with the first quarter of pandemic, it has reached up to double digit, and what we can see is there was willingness of customers to convert, and I don't know what few things were preventing, but it is not like it is not going to go away. It is going to stay there, and we have also seen examples like in Amazon growth in US and other countries, Western countries, and so people are there, consumers willing to use these services, online services, to procure and fulfill their needs. So it is going to be there, is what I feel. Yeah.
Satish?
Yeah, so I would like to basically distinguish between D2C in two aspects. So basically, as you had also started off, that D2C is generally what it brings to a table is promise of disintermediation, direct access to consumer, micro segmentation, prototyping, etc. But what when we have this D2C, we have two distinct channels or this. One is Amazon, where it's a marketplace, and second is where it's your own organic website. So these to me are two significantly different, because when you talk of disintermediation from an e-commerce perspective, Amazon and all that may still give you a little bit of help there, but the major issue is direct access to consumer. So basically, if you want to do a micro segmentation, even a simple campaign, if you want to do a targeted campaigning, if you want to do a targeted marketing, which is not possible with the marketplace model, because that data for various reasons, privacy, etc., is not shared. So you never know if you are supposed to want to target a customer only in a specific demographic. Forget geography. So I'm not even going to the psychography or some other type of segmentation, but at least that part of the job. That is not possible in a normal marketplace. Whereas a marketplace gives you that reach, that instant reach. For example, if you start your own organic site, what happens is the customer acquisition cost is initially very high. Because you have to spend a lot on advertising to attract the customers to your website. Because Amazon, you already have that acquired customer base. So that is a different to this. But what it brings to the table, whether the from our own organic side, is basically your direct access to consumer. You get the demographics, psychographic, whatever you can do, whatever analysis. It allows you to give the flexibility of prototyping, which is very important, because in a traditional FMCG, when we do want to do some new product launch, We select a market first, then there's an elaborate launch plan done. People go to that field, then they camp out there, then their elaborate launch is done. Then you have 6 months to evaluate the results. Then you decide to scale up. Here it's a very fail fast approach type which can be done. You can target your perfect demographic, because generally when you do a traditional FMCG launch, those segmentations are actually forgotten. You don't get that for this, because you go to the retail, you just see the packs, etc. Here it is possible to actually target your perfect demographic, your perfect this. At least you can do that. You can track them. Some you can offer as you can later on, as your model grows, you can actually have some sort of a loyalty program just for launches. You can test bed, to use it as a test bed. So that to me is the actual promise of a D2C. So currently disintermediation costs for a traditional FMCG setup would majorly be offset by the cost of advertising to pull the customers in. So those costs would not be the prime driver. The prime driver is getting to know the consumer, trying if your product is amenable for that personalization. And of course, fail fast, where you can do rapid prototyping. In the current scenario in pandemic, you had to really launch products. Everybody launched disinfectants, etc. So that it was really great, because all FMCG products that earlier everybody used to have take 1 year, 2 years, 1.5 years to just do a NPD launch. But now in this scenario, people launch within months. I think that shortening of the cycle is what is the key.
Interesting. But also, I just wanted to kind of add here and get your views on this space is that, especially you're right in the sense that, when it comes to customer acquisition, especially on your own portal, the cost is high. But can you actually, ignore marketplaces? Because from a customer behavior point of view, a shift has happened in terms of purchasing online, and even if, let's say, some percentage of the customers have gone back to the traditional way of doing their Sunday shopping on a Star Bazaar, etc., but still there is a large group of customers who have found it very useful to and very easy to be on these marketplaces, whether it is food products or whether it is toiletries or anything like that. So how do we, but is that shift significant in terms of the shift to online shopping? Is it significant? And or is it that people are typically trickling back to their old behavior of shopping through your local kirana stores or the hyper markets, etc. And even especially, I want to ask this question from the hyper local, like the Swiggy, Zomato's, Dunzo's point of view, because even like Amazon and all, still I think we become comfortable, but really pulling out Dunzo to buy atta, was not really the kind of behavior that was seen pre-pandemic. So is this, do we see actually that the customer is, significant number of customers have changed their behavior, or are we seeing that that they're going back to the old way of doing things?
Yeah, so I think that of course, people will, most people, it of course depends on the products which they are buying. So there will be many products which you would have ourselves bought basically online, but we would want that going back to that traditional this. For example, shoes. I would have, maybe in the pandemic, I would have bought shoes online because there was no other way, because the shoe shops were closed. But now that the shoe shop was opened, I would like that experience. See, finally, a person's also like that experience of going to a shop, getting waited upon. So things which are amenable to that, I think those will still maybe continuing on offline or in a physical manner. But things like staples, etc. Earlier there was that reliance on that neighborhood kirana wala. I like to see the grain. I like to see this. But I think because of the pandemic, many of those taboos have gone. So many of those things which have shifted to the online model will, I think, continue in the long run. But where it is high involvement category, etc., will still be on a physical move. So you may do your research online, you will do everything online, but finally, for that final decision, you will always go offline and discuss, buy, see, feel and see, and then buy.
Interesting. Okay. If I could just request Mr. Mistry to come in here, sir. I think, Satish made an important point, right? Especially when we're talking about high value items and or items where we are looking at an experience, right? I think, and in your case, I think that would your products fall in that category. Do you see that behavior that people will typically go to a Reliance or a Chroma and see the product and understand it, but come to Amazon and buy it? Or, I mean, are you seeing that kind of a behavior here, or are they coming to your website to?
Fundamentally, during the pandemic, definitely there was a massive shift towards, I would say, the e-com side, the marketplaces and everything. At the same time, we also saw that people were pretty scared to go into a retail store and touch anything, because they don't know who else had touched the product before. So technology, I would say, was utilized out there. So we had QR codes set up in front of the machines where you take your own phone and you scan it and you get a video, which is immediately flashed on your mobile. But there is definitely a shift of the consumer behavior, whereby specifically for health and hygiene, and of course, we are into water and cleaning, but still, we had a lot more pandemic about the water side of it. So, people were scared already, okay, and people were further scared that they cannot be fighting two pandemics at the same time, a waterborne disease while COVID was being fought. So I think there was a fundamental shift, okay, but then targeted towards people looking at health and hygiene in a very different manner. They're looking at health and hygiene from the perspective not just about COVID, but it's also health and hygiene throughout. So the research complement became a lot more. So we saw our websites getting flooded with indications as to how does this product work as compared to the rest. Specifically in the cleaning category, right? Because during the pandemic, there were no maids in the house. So people had to utilize equipment in order to clean their houses. So I think there was a fundamental shift out there. So the behaviors have changed. But when you implement the behaviors with empathy, that's what creates lifetime value with the customer. And that's what we have seen happening over the period of this time.
Interesting. So, with any from your experience, what do you how are you seeing? Because you're working with many FMCG companies. So, what is your experience in in terms of the adoption of the D2C model?
See, thanks, Ipsita. In fact, we did help one of the largest FMCG companies to go D2C during pandemic itself. What would otherwise have been a 6-month cycle for taking a decision, getting it implemented. They were wanting to go live in 30 days. Okay, so that was a reaction to the pandemic because. I see it this way. Customers, they had started experimenting from the places where they shop. They had not changed loyalties because they knew that they want a certain essential item which is from a particular brand. So it's the only thing that the stores were not open, right? So earlier it was a walk into the neighborhood store or a mall or a brand store, and now they had no place to shop. So they started experimenting with the places. They were even ready to explore more options. This created new brands, and the discovery of such brands also in a way started creating a low end disruption, either with their USPs, which is what the birth of D2C is, either in terms of a USP or a pricing, and then it became a snowball, right? So just like to give an example, what a company called Beardo did in the men's grooming sector. So they all started D2C, which is, see, D2C in our view, or in my personal view, it's not a substitute for offline retail. So we should not see it that whether it's a flash in the pan or is it going to stay. It is definitely going to stay. It was there earlier as well, right? So you could say that now it is sold online, but there were cases where direct marketing was also D2C, where you reach the brand reach, and who better than Mr. Mistry would know this, right? So it is not a substitute. It's great for a brand to start for getting customer feedback in close contact with what the customer wants. and it is also important how you make a channel for the customer experience. So now what we witnessed was post pandemic, there was almost a 200% growth in the number of orders that the brands posted, during the pandemic, and it's definitely a beautiful challenge with a huge opportunity which was grabbed with both the hands from a lot of brands. Now another challenge, however, was that consumers across the world have gone instant breaking news over to instant messaging from WhatsApp, instant ride with Uber. And now with the advent of e-commerce, marketplaces and D2C with a super agile supply chain, which could, send goods just in time. And the last mile delivery partners, just like you mentioned, Ipsita, about Dunzos of the world, it has now become a new normal of getting things as quick as possible. Okay, so much so that drones also have started delivering things to get the jobs done faster. So traditionally, in our experience, FMCG companies have and continue to work in a hub and spoke distribution models, but to solve the problem of quick deliveries, they are also toying with the idea of making the distribution centers or making the distributors and stockists as a fulfillment channel, so that the product gets reached to the customers as soon as possible. See, there is nothing new, right? There is already a network which could be leveraged as a fulfillment center, and this is what I see, and having worked with a lot of FMCG companies, that everybody wants to leverage that thing. Obviously, there are training issues, tech challenges, which we will discuss, but I see, the adoption is there, and the quickest way how to solve this is being explored by these companies for sure.
Interesting. Okay. Any inputs, Vishal, Anup, Mr. Bapna? Any point of view from your end on this on this space?
Just on this point of marketplaces and D2C, one distinction that I would like to make is in marketplaces as well. The basket-based marketplaces where typical grocery is sold versus Amazon model. Then again, Amazon also has fresh, and then you can be a vendor as well as a partner on Amazon. So everything which is basket based, they have a limitation in terms of how many items they can actually put in their inventory. They are trying to push that forward as well. But if your products are in that category, grocery and all, the cost of delivery of, especially for example, fruit juices and all, it sending it direct to a consumer from your facility is costlier probably than doing it. So I'm just talking about the pure margins and all, and not consumer data, all the other benefit that you get. So for the differentiated products where consumer is ready to wait, and those cannot be part of all the basket-based marketplaces, that is where a real opportunity is to actually launch these differentiated products and then bring consumers to your own website and all.
So I want to move on to the next question which we have, and I think that's the question which which would probably is to me one of the most critical parts of this discussion right now, is that while we are talking all these things about direct to customer, and we just talked about personalization, we talked about data, customer data, we've talked about fulfillment, right? We're talking about the distribution channels, etc. Okay, now my point is that keeping all of these things in mind, okay, how is this impacting the whole digital transformation agenda of CIOs, and how are they is it significantly changing the entire the journey or the plan that was in place, or it is or we are just looking at this as a as or is it just that we are that that these things were anyway planned, right? So I mean, just to give you an example, supply chain, right? Now we talked about the whole hub and spoke, and then Sumit just mentioned that we are looking at FMCG companies are actually looking at their stockists to kind of provide the fulfillment, right? So how does this impact from a tech perspective, from a process perspective? Does it have a significant impact? Is there a huge change in the whole digital transformation agenda? And if I could just request Mr. Abhay Bapna to start to give his views on this.
So we are in the essential commodity business. So when first COVID came, then it was like food item needs to be available. You have to supply somehow. But from a manufacturing point of view, you see that we were more or less okay. But when it came to sudden demand, which is coming from individual or society, that is nothing but what to do with D2C. B2B we were already working. B2C we were already working. But all the roadmap was more to do with the B2B and B2C. Then suddenly we had to move to the D2C component. But it is um, designing the technical transformation is easy, but supporting from the logistics side, from warehouse side, from availability of all the products, fulfilling that on the time, delivering last mile small quantity at each and every place. That's the one where you have to do route optimization, proper planning and execution. That's where we had to spend a lot of time. But gradually again we are seeing that the trend is changing now, because what people have realized that they want to order from a place where they can fulfill 100% or 80% of their basket. They don't want to go essential item order from somewhere, then go for fruit somewhere, some other thing somewhere. So that is where we found that during this period, more of a risk reduction. People were buying from more from the branded uh, Star Bazaar, Big Bazaar, or though at least there 80% of the basket get filled. So that's one way, but still we are working on D2C. That is our objective, and ensure that fulfillment component. With that, the challenging availability of product when the order comes from anywhere from the country, you have to be. You should be ready to fulfill. That's the first question. If you don't fulfill, the customer will not come here again. Actually, so that's area where we are working. But we have done a couple of uh, unplanned digital initiatives also, which are in progress, gradually monitoring, because analytics or route optimization, route planning becomes a critical component. Otherwise your cost of delivery becomes very high. So that's also we are working on that. So these are some of the areas we have focused actually as of now, and fulfillment is the key. 100% fulfillment is, that's the key. Availability of product is there. We have not done much on the depot rationalization, but identified more of a retailers in all specific area where we fulfill, and that becomes a fulfilling point for the last mile delivery. So that's how we work. But digital is the key. Analytics is the one which is driving us, because the volume of data generated because of that. So where we are more focusing on insights, that is route planning, suggesting automatic SKUs which should be needed, because when you say essential, it's last for 1 month or 2 months. Again, you can autofill. So those are the things which we are scheme promotion that became very easy. And we identified a couple of societies where we found that the number of people are more, where we did the direct delivery. So those are the things which we did, but focus is on this area right now.
Okay, but are you, you is there like are we also looking at the ecosystem, right? Like the distributors, which are not directly controlled by the company, because the distributor will have its own system. Is that getting included into the digital transformation agenda? And then are we looking to build put in technology into the distributors' own operations to ensure this fulfillment is happening?
We already started this journey 4 5 years back. So we identified A-class distributor, included them. All the retailers of A-class distributors are in place. Salesman details are in the place. Where is beat planning, route planning? So these are things. It is already in place, but we have to expand into the where we are working, so that last mile fulfillment becomes very easy for us. And that's a challenging component. It's not so easy. Either you have to have a shippers who can deliver, because when you say food items, it might be 1 kg to 10 kg to 15 kg, oil of 15 kg. How do you deliver it? So you need to plan for the route in the small tempos or auto rickshaw or whatever it is. So these are the challenges we face in our.
Interesting. Mr. Mistry, your views on this, please.
There is a bit of a difference between, from example, from a consumer durables section, which we represent, as compared to the FMCG. Yes, our D2C journey is ongoing right now. It's not completely done and dusted. Okay, because we are working with our retailers to utilize their database to reach the end consumers. Now, there's a big difference between the large format retail like Roma, as compared to the regional retail, as compared to the direct dealers or retailers and the Kirana shops. So the technology is not standard across the board. So effectively, we've had to make a lot of changes to our digital transformation journey, because what we utilize for direct sales does not reflect to a D2C complement when it comes to the retail operations. But I would say, we have been working on the fact that regional retailers have a database of clients who would like to have that product, do not wish to go to the shop and touch it because of the fear of the hygiene complement, utilizing their database to reach the end customer, utilizing a direct channel. But ultimately, you still have to pay the retailer their commissions. And within that retailer, there could be a distributor, okay, whom you have to pay a commission to. So we are trying to encompass that entire IT ecosystem and bring it to the fact that, yes, we will go D2C to the end consumer. But at the same time, because they are your customers, we are fulfilling the requirements of ensuring that they get the commissions, okay, including the distributor who's in between. Easier said than done, because IT systems, the ERP systems, are not catered for that kind of gig working economy standards. None of them are. So there's a lot of customization which has to be done. There's a lot of work which has to be done. Now come to the other side of the coin, which is the Kirana shops. Okay. What we found is that if we want to utilize their customer base, because their customer base is also important, they're loyal to them. So we are reaching out to that, but utilizing simplified technology like WhatsApp, which is cheaper to implement, faster to utilize, with the entire supply chain planning done by us. So effectively, we are doing more of a, I would say, a primary sale, but actually reaching to the tertiary end, ensuring that the customer is satisfied. Because ultimately, if we sell a product which is a water-based product, we also have to provide service. So we have to ensure that the entire IT ecosystem, which definitely is different from our direct sales, has got to reach the end customer, regardless of whether it's a retailer, a large format retail, a regional retail, or a Kirana shop. So big changes have to be done on the digital transformation end in order to meet that. And at the same time, ensuring that we are providing the right level of interface to because why would a retailer give us their customer database? So we have to ensure the security behind it, the cyber security behind it, and ensuring that we are not letting the retailers down. The huge change.
Any views from anyone else in the panel? Yeah, sure, Prashant.
Yeah. So as you asked, like, any change in the digital transformation journey or plans roadmap. So definitely there is a change, because at least in our case, the e-commerce volume contribution to the entire business was very small before last year. So it was not at all there in our plan. In fact, we had removed their presence from the main entity, and so they were not part of our SAP implementation also.
Okay.
Yeah, but then because of sudden change now, we need to really seriously give thought on it, and we are evaluating a couple of products. So yeah, so it has came to attention of everyone in the organization that not only digital, but then we are also looking out for infrastructure change. Like we have recently gone for new warehouse management application for them. So things are changing for as far as this D2C business is concerned. Yeah.
So I would like to add over here one more point. This Prashant brought it about the IT infra portion. Like, for example, we have a factory at Hosur, right? When we more get into the e-commerce, fulfillments, from vendors like Amazon and so on, they have a fixed delivery period where their vehicle will be there, and we have to fulfill their entire requirement, loading the truck and everything. So upgrading of the infra is also one of the major aspect. The connectivity, as well as your ERP uptime. Again, these are all essential part of the digital transformation journey. So yes. That is also there.
Yeah, Satish, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So basically, we are as I told you, we are already present on an e-commerce marketplace like Amazon, etc. We have our own organic website also, which we have started to sell direct to consumer. The fulfillment, of course, is from our warehouses to partners like delivery. This the major problem which the way we are currently handling is we have not gone and changed our supply chain or something. We are using our same supply chain systems to cater to this. So basically, but on a e-commerce side, basically we are using more of FBA type of models so as that delivery time and all can be reduced. Because in a total, when you say a D2C, there are several aspects of that. Like you require tech platforms for customer acquisition, then you require something for campaign management, CRM, then logistics is a different ball game. So as people said that the warehouse management systems, etc., you require to cater to this. Then logistics, then you require AI chatbots, like type of things, because you're directly engaging with the customer. So you need that connect because you cannot afford to have a big service desk or something to handle those calls. So there are a lot of pieces, and currently, when it's case of a startup or something, the new age what we call as born in the cloud company, it's very easy. But for a traditional company, because you already have a lot of legacy, to suddenly have all these pieces together and do it fast, it will take time. So that is the big difference, which I could say in between something like maybe a Nykaa, Myntra or something compared to a traditional FMCG, like maybe JL Morrison or somebody would require time to go that there. But we are started on D2C journey, but we may not have all the pieces currently. So we will be going step by step slowly on the way, finding out as whether what works, what doesn't work, because it also depends on your customer base, tier 2 cities versus tier 1 cities versus tier 3 cities. How do you fulfill them, the logistics? Basically, if you're saying D2C, you require partners like deliver or something. If the value of the product is very low, then your cost of freight, transport, and all is very high. So you may not even make a profit on that. So those are the things which you are grappling with.
Interesting. Sumit, I kind of want to ask you, in relation to what clearly we're hearing is, a lot around how logistics space is going to change, how we are looking at order fulfillment, data management. And I think one thing which probably hasn't been really touched upon is the inventory visibility, right? Especially if you're doing fulfillment, not just from your own warehouse, but if you're looking at fulfillment from your distribution network as well, right? So from your perspective, right, how are you seeing the transformation agenda evolving?
See, I mean, Satish made a very valid point. If you just count the nuances in terms of marketing automation, let's say I want to go D2C, the first thing I have to do is to choose the web store platform. The journey starts from there, right? Now, I choose that, I evaluate that, and once that is done, I find a payment gateway. Then I find logistics service partner, and then probably I would like to serve the entire India. So what I would do is probably I take a logistic aggregator who could choose the right delivery partner for me with code or basis the rate cards. All of these nuances have to be captured during the agenda creation itself. Forget about information. The thing is, offline market works for a limited number of hours. Okay, it could be morning 8 to evening 9 to 10. E-commerce works 24/7, and this is the transformation that has to be preempted, that a customer order at 1 p.m. in the night and they are still expecting delivery in the morning at 7 o'clock. Such kind of, as Mr. Sir rightly said, the empathy has to be there from a customer behavior. Right now, customers can do anything. What they can do is they can order online and wait for the store or the distributor to ship. What choices do brands have now? They can ship from their own warehouse, which could be 1,000 kilometers away, or they could probably have dark stores in each of the pin codes and clusters. They could probably give the entire mandate to a third-party logistics and let them do the entire fulfillment piece, or they could leverage the distributor network and make them digitally savvy and train them, which could become another challenge. So there are many options, and all of this has to be put in a drawing board and see what exactly will work and phase it out. Mr. Mystery also gave an example where people did not want to touch anything in the stores. That gives birth to new feature requirements that we see from our clients is make an app where the customers do not have to even touch the app for the payments. So this gives birth to new technologies like a no contact shopping app. Customers can see what they want at the stores. Even if the inventory is not available, the store will still accept the order. Then a link will go to the customer's phone. They will do the processing of the payment there. The same information comes back to the store POS, and from there it goes to the central ERP like an SAP or a Navision. So all of these things were not there earlier, right? It is now becoming a new normal. So these have to be action and planned when you create a digital agenda, and certainly you could end up, if not done rightly, you could end up having 10 to 12 different service providers of such technologies, and then after a year you sit again and see that how do I unify all of this. Okay, it becomes another challenge to solve. So interestingly, but all very good challenges to have.
Just if I could just drop a follow-up question to this to the entire panel. See, I'm just trying to me, D2C is just not about your own web store, right? To me, D2C includes the hyperlocal channels, it includes the marketplaces, okay, and your own market, your own e-commerce site would probably not yet, like you mentioned, that yield that business as and I think that a lot of FMCG companies, like I was talking to a company which was working with McCormick recently, and a lot of FMCG companies are looking at their e-commerce portal more from an experience delivery. Okay, and rather than really looking at it as a sales channel so much, right? But the real D2C business is really coming from your hyperlocal opportunities and your marketplaces, right? And in that space, there are different, I mean, are FMCG companies actually turning around and saying, hey, I'm going to revamp my entire distribution network to fulfill on marketplaces and hyperlocal, okay, and if not now, that is the agenda going forward, okay, or because right now there is, I mean, people are doing it kind of as they go, right? You're getting you're doing fulfillment through some of your important partners, distributors, like a lot of large FMCG companies have macro distributors who then push product down to further distributors. So the point is, are we how is that change happening, and where is that fitting into the digital transformation agenda essentially? So Prashant, any views on that?
Yeah, basically, in our case, there's a change in business, as you have asked. So recently, we have opened up new stores like Suhana Bazaar stores, which is again one of the D2C kind of platforms, and we are going to for D2C platforms or the stores where we do not have very strong traditional distribution network. So in future, that might be the these stores could be the supply point for our e-commerce customers as well. So in a way, the few strategies are planned along with the traditional business. So we are not changing the total distribution network setup as such, but then we are planning a few things which will basically complement to what the next consumer behavior is happening. And important thing which I missed in my earlier discussion was about the data, because when we are connecting to this end consumers and through this e-com channel, lot of data is going to get generated, and then we need to have that kind of analytics plan in our digital roadmap to analyze that data and maybe plan certain new products or new range of solutions for that kind of consumers. So even in the current e-com platform, we are not selling the traditional way. So we have done some changes for this customer, and we are coming out with some novel things which basically attract the consumers. So there is a little difference in business strategies as well as digital strategies as far as this business is concerned.
Okay. Anup, I want to hear your views on this also, given that, yours is a product which is perishable, right? So you need to kind of, your distribution or the fulfillment has to be, especially production, fulfillment, it has to be planned in such a way that the product perishability needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, that's right. So, Chita, what we have realized is that products where the weight of the product against the cost of the product, ours is not a great ratio to have. Okay, for D2C. So we are getting into we are launching a product range which is more suitable for this business. We understand the importance of it in long term and how it can piggyback the overall business which we have, the larger business we have. That's how we're changing. So once our D2C becomes fully operational, what we are going to check, and we are hoping that what can happen then is, for example, right now on Amazon we are vendors, right? Can we be vendors as well as sellers on Amazon, so that we have two channels open there? If at all the stocks are not available on the Amazon actual like FBA, then the orders then can be seamlessly routed through the already available channel that we have, because for D2C you have that operational supply chain. So these things then would come into the picture. Yeah.
Interesting. Vishal, your views?
Yeah, a couple of views over here, a little bit similar to Anup. Like, for example, we have done ERP integrations with Amazon, kind of EDI integration, so that, the PO will come down directly to our ERP from their ERP, and the SO will create it, the invoice will create it automatically. So the whole that integration as well as automation happened, which will save a lot of time, especially with e-com or D2C, kind of a perspective. Infra, we talk about perishable product, like you said. So we have juices, canes, which are more, strengthen. The shelf life is 18 months instead of 3 months, for example, right? So lot of changes happen. This year, the whole agenda is to digitalize the sales department for the organization, the entire working of the sales, so that they are. So we are revamping our entire sales department to all digitalize. It's a kind of a big change management also, because they are not, the sales guys are not used to use the technology stuff, starting from their attendance to capturing everything, using BI tools to see the sale reports, everything. So working in that front also, it's a big change management that is also going on in the organization. BI role plays a vital role over here. The kind of detail which we are getting, since a lot of data has been gathered from starting from factory to the entire ERPs, how to utilize that data, how to convert into predictive analysis. Like one of the earlier point had, we need to see that this particular SKU is more in demand, so how to fulfill that demand automatically with the system itself, rather than somebody will go into that. So a lot of digital transformation things are going on in that direction.
Interesting. Suman, I want to kind of put this question to you also, because we, I know that Vinculum has a platform which is essentially automating this entire fulfillment channel, right? And it's clearly like focusing on saying that how do I seamlessly connect with marketplaces and my fulfillment channels, so whether it's a distributor, warehouse, etc., and how does that smoothly how does that process get automated and flow smoothly, right? So are you seeing this as a are you seeing as a parallel channel that is getting created, or companies are trying to integrate an existing channel towards D2C?
Sure. See, the first point here is to select the right channel, right? So within a particular channel like in Amazon, you have 3 to 4 modes of doing business, and each mode has its own cost structure, right? Same way, let's say if you have sent an order via Amazon to a customer and the customer returns it, then who bears the returns charge, right? If the customer damages it. So returns management is also a very important part of calculating what is going to happen, especially in India. 30%, 25 to 30% is the returns that happens, right? So you have to be prepared to handle that volume as well. You have to prepare your warehouses to do the proper QC. And in e-commerce, leakages happen in the payments. So let's say you are using a payment gateway, you have a certain percentage for every transaction. You need to check whether the percentage has been rightly deducted. Same way for any marketplace business, you need to check the payment which was supposed to come into your account, has it come exactly like that? A return which was supposed to come to you or your warehouse in, let's say, 30 days, has it really come back? Because every day there is sales, every day there are returns, every week there are payments coming. You are in a frenzy. You really do not want to, lose the race. So what happens is you kind of ignore that, and trust that everything is happening okay. But when you really deep dive, you find that there are leakages, and these leakages are as much as 3% to 5% of your total turnover, right? So this is one another aspect. And the traditional ERPs and the financial manpower may not be very equipped to handle such kind of nuances. And that's where, this is a important, point that I thought I would bring it up, especially from the financial angle. And, at the end of the day, it's all about money. And the second thing is the common inventory, right? Brands and retailers do not have unlimited inventories. There is always an inventory which has to be published across any sales channels of your choice, and you have to do it at the same time. Now, when we say about technologies or the digital transformation agenda, the core thing is, what is the technology solving, right? We have to understand that. First is, either there is a loss of sales because the stocks are not published or the inventory is not updated at the right sales touch point, or either there is so much of stock in certain locations which is not utilized. So either there is a loss of sale or there is a non-utilization of the stock. So you need to have a system where you can publish a common inventory across the sales channels, make sure that whatever payments are coming, you have real-time visibility on the payments and also real-time visibility on the stock at all times. And this is where comes the challenge, right? And selecting the logistic partners, whether you have to, the business team has to then give a logic as to which logistic partner should be doing what SKUs for what locations for what rate cards. All of this again has to really be thought about very, very carefully, because the orders can come from anywhere. You cannot just sit having one mother warehouse in certain place of India and with a dedicated space in the warehouse only for online orders. Now you have to kind of see it in a 360-degree way, and the data is flowing from marketplace, from web stores, from a Dunzo, from everywhere. All of this has to be managed real time, and it is very possible to do that. It's the only thing is that we should not get overwhelmed. We should just kind of create this flow, understand what we need to do, if the cost structures are there or not, and just try and connect the dots. And I think there are further nuances. If an order is coming, there could be an order of, let's say, in certain cases like of Hector beverages, there could be 10 different juices. Now, 5 juices are there in Ahmedabad warehouse and 5 juices are there in Hyderabad warehouse as per the inventory availability. And the SLA has to be within 24 hours. So, a system, what it does is it intelligently splits the orders to both the locations so that the delivery happens on time. All of this has to be stick together as a solution, and we are seeing that this kind of discussions are taking place more often than earlier, and people are realizing that it cannot be a silo way of thinking but a 360-degree way of thinking.
And let's now move to the next question, and I think which is something that from a CIO's perspective are always grappling with, and it's an industry agnostic situation. It is that whenever it comes to new technologies, right, it's usually startups which bring out this tech for us, and we read all the happy news in the when we read all happy news, cabin care tied up with this company, or or something like that, or PNG tied up with this new startup, etc. But many times, and I have personally experienced this, that when it comes to implementing the tech, right, it is a struggle for the CIOs, the tech teams in the organization primarily because while startups bring great technology, they don't really bring in the domain knowledge of the industry, right? The second thing is that startups tend to focus on a particular problem, okay, whereas we are dealing mostly as a process, right? Any technology essentially impacts the process, right? So are we seeing what are the challenges that we are facing when it comes to really saying, because at the end of the day, D2C is going to be only successful if we have the right technology in place, okay? Else it's not going to be successful. How much ever we would want it to be successful, it's going to not work out, because if we don't have the necessary tech in place. So what are the challenges that we are seeing in terms of implementing the technology to actually run D2C successfully? Are there enough tech players out there who or is it a challenge to kind of we have to build around that significantly? So Vishal, if you could share your views on this.
Yeah, so definitely, for D2C, we need to go with the technology, no doubt about it. And we do face challenges with the changing world because a couple of factors. Experience is one of them, right? Where vendor, some of the vendors don't have that kind of a aggressive experience or a domain related experience when we talk about, like, for example, if I take my example, we have BI in place and all, but somehow the process is not that strengthened, so we are replacing our BI, right? That is one portion. So dealing with the vendors, try to give them our perspective, this is what we are looking for, or this is what we are looking for. So that's a kind of a big challenge. Similarly, the other portion which we talked about earlier, like integration, EDI integration, and other stuff. Again, pretty much struggle with the vendors. How to go about it? We need to strengthen our thing and save time, because time is very precious in D2C market, right? Fulfillment need to be done on time. E-commerce, supply chain will not give you time to do your work in a longer period, like it was used to happen 1.5 years back. So there's a lot of drastic change happen. We have seen in the overall journey for past 1.5 years, a lot of changes happen, and we have to act accordingly. So definitely, little bit challenge are there in terms of understanding the pace of the nature of the industry. So that is one of the things which we have discussed and faced with the vendors.
Interesting. Satish, any views on this?
Basically, what I feel is that generally when tech platforms come up, they basically look at more of a rip out and replace type of thing. So as we have all discussed, this is an additional channel. We are not going to rip off our existing systems and just replace it. It has to work in tandem, and the processes, nobody's going to put extra manpower beyond a point just to manage this extra channel, because currently, like it or not, the traditional trade, everything is a higher channel. The cost of sales is low. Here it's an adjunct channel to this. So while coming up, so the solutions have to be tuned that they will work with the existing channels. It will work with the existing processes mainly, because your supply chain, as I said, depots are there, your distributors are there. So you cannot say that no, you will not do depot this. Your depot, in your same depot, you will have to handle your D2C channel in this manner. So that doesn't work in the real world that way. You have to go along, you have to somehow integrate the two. So that philosophical integration is somewhat lacking in those things. So that's what I feel.
Apna, I know you talked about fulfillment in a big way, and that is clearly a challenge. So how has been your experience in working with, startups in this space?
So you asked it to me?
No, Mr. Bapna.
Yeah, sorry. So, to be frank, we started this journey almost 2-3 years back. And what we decided, we identified a couple of problems which business is facing, and we started with this. So first problem was sales and operation planning, which was the problem for end-to-end supply. We have multiple plants and the order can come from it. So how do I, what is the least cost of production where from, and the transportation cost from where I can ship. So that's the first thing. That was one problem. And we identified one small startup solution, which we, it was a plug and play. Same is the type which we identified that, okay, predictive maintenance was a consistently issue. So what we identified, some solution which was so simple that you just plug in that tool. It is a it's like a small device, and it will give you temperature, vibration, and information which are required to ensure that the, so we, what we went, we are going with, most of the time we are going with the startups to solve particular problem at that point of time, but keeping a overall long-term vision into consideration. So planning, warehouse management. So return was the one question which was the challenge in our case also. If return is there, then it becomes a huge challenge. How do I reduce my transportation and return cost and all those? How do I reconcile my account? So these are the things which happen. So we ensured that we had a, like, while, how do I reduce my return? While loading the truck itself, I identify which is the batch which I have to load. Earlier it was mixed batch. Now it is like, I know what are the batch I am loading, which is first manufacture, first distribution. So ensures that the returns from the modern format source or other format source are minimum. So this is a simple way of doing. But whatever we started, I think most of the solution except for S4HANA are more of a startup kind of solution where we are also maturing, and startup companies are also maturing in the sense that one of the solution is for end-to-end transportation planning, execution, and ensuring that the account reconciliation. So we are working on digitization from primary point of view, secondary, and last. So that's how we started, but it is journey. It takes time, and as you mature, business itself asks for additional things because their life also becomes easy. From cost or timeline points of view, it is becoming a very simple process for the users. Instead of staying and till midnight to ensure that the order is entered into the system, now they don't have to, like, EDI is the one of the simplest thing which was done. Ordering from other, like, people, companies, or people who cannot give order to the system, we converted into OCR, AI, and basis. So those are the simple things which we went through. And right now we are focusing on last mile delivery and automation and reconciliation through startup companies.
Mr. Mistry, actually, I wanted to ask you this, like there is so much, there's a lot of buzz around, let's say, fintech companies and, and you don't really come across a lot of startups saying, I'm an FMCG tech company. So is there actually a shortage of startups or, tech out there for FMCG? And are we, are we actually just trying to figure out which is the best out there, or are there people actually saying, hey, we are into FMCG tech?
First and foremost, it's not cool to say I'm FMCG tech. Right? Okay. If you say I'm fintech, okay, people are interested. Okay, and rightly so, because fintech, if you sort of judge the parameters of it, every bank is a very traditionally oriented bank. Okay. Maybe a couple of years back, utilizing cloud in fintech, in the banks was like a word of taboo. Now the banks are gradually migrating to it. But when you talk about the FMCG tech, there is tech available. There are startup companies, but the primary issues with these startup companies, specifically in this place, is that they basically covered for the Gen X and the Gen Y. Now, when you bring down that kind of a technology, which is highly digital oriented, highly mobile oriented, into a traditional company, your first challenge is not the technology. The first challenge is the culture. Yeah. All right. As long as you manage that culture well, to a large extent, what is in it for me? Okay, the acceptance becomes more, but the technologies are there. Only thing is taking these front-end cloud-based technologies and mapping it into a traditional legacy world, like the ERPs of the world, are where the challenges lie. And if you can crack them, okay, using a term of the tech called the middleware, okay, then you are going to be successful. But there is nothing which says this is my entire ball of wax which I can just plug and play and take it off from a company and get it done. No, it is a consolidation of multiple solutions put together, okay, loosely coupled in order to ensure that you are productive and efficient. It means that if you fail faster, you reorient yourself. That's how it's being done today. But I'm pretty sure that as the companies mature, because these are the front end companies of, well, I would say, the startup companies, which mature much faster because they're learning ground up. Okay, and that is where they bring in the value to the businesses.
So you are on the other side, I think. Here, you're bringing in the perspective of what technology providers are. So what is your view in terms of where do we stand? Where is the challenge of building this marriage successfully?
Sure. In fact, I used to run a startup of my own, which eventually got acquired by Vinculum in 2019. So I can completely relate to the conversation. And our first client was in fact a Fortune 500 company where we did a POC, and they are still continuing to be clients right now. So the entire journey is definitely has changed in the last 5 years. Most of the corporates now have a startup cell within their organization which are looking at technologies, and this could be across various functions, right? So there could be a particular problem or a use case in a supply chain which they wanted to solve. They will look out and publish this information in the pool where all the startups are there in that accelerator. Or there are corporate accelerators where a lot of the startups register themselves and try and solve the problems, which could be a paid pilot. And slowly and steadily, we have seen that if, let's say, if a brand is coming to us, they would probably show us all the list of all their pain points and problems. So, and they cannot go and scout for different technologies or different startups. So what we have done is created a partner ecosystem, right? So we may not be doing a particular job well, but we do have partners where we are tightly coupled and integrated with them, so that it is easier for a solution to be presented to the brands, and it is easier for the brands to also deal with them. Otherwise, you will really end up with 20 to 30 startup companies providing different technologies. All of them are on a different tech stack. As rightly said, there has to be a middleware, both in terms of technology as well as in terms of dealing with the brands as well, because you cannot have multiple spokes. It really cannot get the job done properly. So we see, yes, in terms of providing the technology, the evaluation parameters are different. The CIO would look at something very, very different. Could be a product champion bringing in new technologies into the system, but the business user may be completely different, the one who has to actually use it. And then there could be third parties which are not part of the direct ecosystem, like a franchisee partner or a distributor, who have to get trained suddenly with the new technologies. So these kind of challenges are there, and it is in the lastly, today you're getting 100 orders a day. Just after 3 days you start getting 10,000 orders a day. All of this again has to be thoroughly evaluated if that technology is agile and scalable, because in e-commerce anything can happen at any time, especially in the festival seasons. And if there is a killer product that you have to launch and it suddenly does very well, all of this cannot be anticipated, but you can at least anticipate if the technology can handle that well or not. So yeah, I mean, in terms of partner ecosystem, always look out for middlewares who have a great partner ecosystem which can suffice most of the requirements. And also another challenge that that I have observed is product companies are now not open for so much of customizations, which could become a challenge with legacy brands where their processes are set and they would require a hell lot of customizations in order to get the marriage together. Because product companies start customizing, their one to many concept becomes very different. So these are some of the challenges that has to be preempted, and if there is a workaround which can be done. So you have to adopt the new technologies, and the startups also have to adopt and see how the processes are there and make their architecture in a way which can be easily configured directly by the client rather than they having to customize the solutions.
Any other thoughts from anyone on the table on overall on D2C direct to customer and how we are looking at it as a future strategy. All right. So, I mean, if I had to conclude this discussion, I would say that while D2C is a channel, it is still very much an emerging channel, and in terms of share of pie of revenue, it's still not. We're still not seeing it as something which can overtake the traditional business model that is there. However, at the same time, there is clearly an opportunity. And it's more of a wait and see mode, but it's not something that can be ignored. Okay, but at the same, so while we keeping this in mind, there is also a significant shift in terms of how do we execute on D2C model, okay, and how do we execute that, and that actually requires some serious rethinking in terms of how do we look at logistics, supply chain, products. Okay, what is the product offering, and I think even one step further, which probably we haven't had time today to discuss, is the consumer experience that we are trying to give. Because many times now, especially with access to the data that we get from D2C, it will probably significantly give companies control over the consumer experience that they want to deliver through D2C. And that could be another significant space where D2C is going to be very critical for organizations. So yes, clearly that it requires a different thinking, and I think from what I've heard from all of you is that companies are in experiment mode on this thinking. So nobody's really said, okay, I have cracked the code and this is it, but it is mostly about experimenting and seeing what works for us, what doesn't work for us, and then eventually coming up with something that will probably mature and over a period of time. And while at the same time, while this thinking is happening, there is a lot of on the other hand, there is a lot of work that's happening on the tech side, both from, I think, large organizations, startups, even interestingly, your logistics companies and companies which you don't think would probably be involved in this are actually saying, okay, how do I build tech for D2C essentially, and how do I serve that? So, but clearly that the question really becomes that how do we take all of this new thinking that's happening on the tech front, and how do we kind of integrate it within our existing legacy processes and systems that are there? And as Sumit brought in, it's probably going to become very important to have a consortium out there or an ecosystem or have a partner which is bringing in an ecosystem which would successfully be able to allow you to experiment and also identify and build that model. So it's not just saying, okay, let's put an AI or let's put a platform or let's put an app together and things, but really saying that, okay, how do I work with a tech partner who is able to bring in that maturity to me, bring in that ecosystem, and then help me to kind of build this entire channel. And then I think customers are evolving, the evolution is happening. So we will really have to see where D2C is going forward. My personal opinion is that eventually, at the way things are going, it'll probably become the channel, maybe not now or decade down the line, but it'll probably be the channel, the primary channel for FMCG companies. And it's difficult to envisage that, given that we are still going to our local shops to have, but there is a lot of in our research, we are clearly seeing that there is a shift in the behavior, maybe not for every kind of FMCG product, but clearly, there is significant shift that is happening, especially with the marketplaces, right? Like I may not go to a brand site, okay, but given the fact that I can get everything on an Amazon, that's a channel that significantly people are picking up, pandemic or no pandemic. So that's more or less, I think, what I got from this discussion. And thank you everybody for attending this discussion and sharing your valuable insights. And please stay connected with us. And we would love to, once we publish the paper and everything, we'll share it with you as well. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks a lot.